Hello, greetings, everybody. My name is James. I am from the internet, and today we are going to be talking about essential frontline workers. Now, almost 2 years ago, at the very beginning of the pandemic, politicians scrambled around to try to cobble together a very loose-knit patchwork set of rules and regulations to shut down as much of the country as possible while still keeping it afloat. And thus was born the term essential frontline workers, not the least of whom were medical care workers, teachers, and people who worked in grocery stores and fast food. These were the people who quite literally had to go to work every single day and risk direct contact with the infected very early on, before we even knew if there would be a vaccine and if it would work. And the country literally stood up and applauded every single time these people went into work and out of work. There were hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Super Bowl commercials made, thanking essential frontline workers for keeping the rest of us afloat, making sure that we were fed and taken care of while we were all working from home. And now, almost 2 years later, it would seem there are no more essential frontline workers. I mean, at least if you were like reading newspapers or articles on websites, it's almost as if those people just vanished. They disappeared. They no longer exist. It's either that or somehow we just stopped calling them essential, which would be really weird because how could they have gone from essential to not essential, even though we're still in the middle of a pandemic that's spreading around? All of this seems mighty suspect, so let's take a look at exactly what's been going on with this term and, more importantly, with these people. Buckle up, everybody. Here we go! As disciplining labor becomes a priority among the political elite, terms essential and frontline fall out of favor with the New York Times. Unlike previous surges, the paper of record rarely refers to those most at risk as essential or frontline anymore. And again, I think that's weird because those people are still out there being essential and on the front line, and somehow we just stopped talking about it. I wonder why that happened. A search of mentions of the labels essential worker and frontline worker in the New York Times reveals that these terms are rarely used anymore by the paper of record to describe those doing the difficult, thankless jobs necessary to keep our society running. During previous surges, uses of the terms increased roughly proportionate with hospitalizations. This makes sense. The more acute the pandemic, the more people were hospitalized, the more the media would focus on the effects on frontline or essential workers. Now, very briefly, if you're wondering what the paper of record refers to, well, the New York Times is usually considered a bellwether for what other players in the industry are doing. Why? Because they are perfectly situated directly in the middle, and they have a ton of readership. People on the right think they're too far to the left, people on the left think they're too far to the right, and all the neoliberals and capitalists absolutely love everything they write. Thus, it is considered the national paper of record here in the good old US of A. But the current Omicron surge, despite having a comparable amount of deaths in absolute numbers and an unprecedented rate of hospitalizations compared with previous surges, one sees no such corresponding uptick in usage. In fact, use of the terms has gone down to an all-time low since the pandemic began back in early 2000, with only 4 mentions of essential or frontline workers so far this month, making the entire month on pace for a total of 9 mentions, compared to more than 100 mentions the last time hospitalizations were this high. The workers, once referred to by the Times as essential and frontline, healthcare workers, nurses, teachers, grocery store workers, are no longer afforded this normative label, but are instead now largely referred to by their job titles alone. Hey, everybody, I'm starting to get the idea here that the terms essential and frontline, even though they were coined by the government, were really just kind of like marketing slogans. You know, the commercial buy basically ran its course sometime after the Super Bowl, you know, when people stopped buying fun-sized bags of Tostitos and 12 packs of Coca-Cola. Yeah, I think all the money for that marketing ran out sometime right after the big game, and ever since then, it's just kind of been all downhill for essential workers. Now, as you can see on the chart here, for more than a year, every single time hospitalizations spiked, the number of times that essential worker appeared in a headline for an article about what was going on with COVID also rose commensurate. See, it went down, then it went up, then it went down. And then when the huge Omicron spike happened, you see the blue thing? That's the number of mentions. Yeah, it would seem that the higher the spike gets now, the fewer mentions there are. Surely that can't be random now, can it? Now, it's a rough metric, and obviously the Times is only one publication, but it is the most influential in the English-speaking world. The rise of hospitalizations and the falling off of hero rhetoric for underpaid labor tracks broadly with a media and political environment that's pivoted from praising those doing essential work to one that is currently occupied with disciplining frontline workers who are unable or unwilling to simply let things go back to normal without demanding safety standards or pay increases. See, everybody? It turns out the old axiom is true. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Even after all of this that has gone on, shutdowns, reopens, reinfections, third infections, almost 1 million people dead, all of this change that's happened over the last 2 years, yet somehow we've come full circle and we're already back to, why don't you go to work, sweaty? Virtually all major Democrats, mayors, governors, and even the White House joined in with Republicans this week to shit on teachers' unions who demanded better safety standards around COVID, unfairly characterizing them as pro-remote learning, rather than proponents of temporary tools to mitigate risks and safety protocols elected officials have failed to implement for over a year. And for Democratic leaders, more social safety spending is off the table. No more eviction moratoriums, no more additional hazard pay, no more guaranteed sick leave, no expanded unemployment insurance. It is back to normal now, no matter what the virus does. And that's right, since we are back to normal, that means there are no more essential workers or frontline workers. There are just lazy workers. You know, everybody who's a member of the working class, no matter the danger and no matter how hard they work, they must be lazy because that's why they're still members of the working class and doing menial work that we once called essential, like literally it was like last year and now we just don't give a shit again. Well, I shouldn't say that. Those of us among the working class, we still give a shit about fellow members of the working class. But the people who write policy and the people who write newspaper articles, it would seem they no longer give a fuck. As first reported by Politico, the Biden White House was urged by corporate America to reduce isolation times for a positive test from 10 days down to 5. Quote, the vaccines changed everything. And you know, since we have vaccines, everybody just has to get back to work. Yet, with the rate of infection and the rate of spread as it now is, there's still going to be 4 times as many people in the hospital from this Omicron burst than there was from the Delta burst. And yet, there's no mention of essential workers anymore. They're just workers. Only now they're workers who have to go get tested a whole lot. Across the country, the spread of Omicron has people scrambling to get tested for COVID. The lines are long, appointments get scooped up fast, and rapid antigen tests are hard to find. This problem is hitting essential workers, often people of color, particularly hard. Unlike many office workers, they can't work from home and their companies haven't stockpiled tests. The result is lost wages or risking infected coworkers or family members. And let's be honest, corporations, sure, they don't want sick people working there, but they sure as shit also don't want to have to pay for the tests. So basically, employees, it's on you if you want to be one of those people who, I don't know, wants to be safe because you have a family or patrons of wherever it is you work that you don't want to get sick and die. Well, then the onus is on you to go get tested. And if you don't get tested and then you get people sick, well, that's also on you. Really, the only thing that's important here is that the companies want you to get back to work, regardless of whether or not you get tested. And frankly, since they don't want you taking 5 days off at a clip, I'm pretty sure they're okay with you not getting tested and just infecting the coworkers and the customers. Because remember, everybody, we're totally reopened. We are, in fact, back to normal. So what does all of this mean for you, the average viewer at home, the fellow member of the working class? Well, it means, statistically speaking, that you, somebody in your household or a family member somewhere, are right now engaged in frontline emergency work. The only difference between now and 2 years ago is that the government isn't giving corporations billions of dollars, to which they take a small portion of that to make commercials thanking their workers that they really don't care about, just to get the free advertising plugs and sell more nachos around the big game. But since that spigot's been turned off, well, now those essential workers are just pains in the ass that keep running their mouth and want to demand stuff like, not dying at work or not bringing a fucking plague home to their children or their elder relatives that they're taking care of. But once again, our beautiful government and the corporations who fund all their political campaigns really don't give a shit. The money part of the show's over. There's no more free money. Everybody has to get back to work. The line has to go up, and the quarterly dividend checks have to keep rolling in. So people, don't stop calling essential workers essential just because the assholes at the top of the food chain find that shit inconvenient. In fact, I find more often than not in life things that make rich, powerful assholes angry and inconvenienced. Yeah, you should do those things more. So essential workers, thank you very much. I appreciate you going to work every day, stocking the shelves, teaching the kids, making sure my mom doesn't die when she goes to the hospital. Even if our government no longer cares and corporations no longer want to pay to say it, you are essential, and I appreciate you. Until next time, my name is James. I am from the internet, and I am out. Peace.